Hello and welcome to another episode of Political Talk. Today I'll be talking about one, if not the worst, politician in the world, Cristina Fernández de Kirchner. As always, thank you very much for watching today's video and do not forget to subscribe to the channel. We also have English, Spanish, Portuguese, and even French subtitles.
Cristina Fernández de Kirchner is an Argentine lawyer and politician who is serving as the 37th Vice President of Argentina since 2019. She also previously served as the President of Argentina from 2007 to 2015 and the First Lady during the tenure of her husband, Néstor Kirchner. She was the second woman to have held the Argentine presidency, the first directly elected female president, and the first woman re-elected to the office. Ideologically, she identifies herself as a Peronist and a progressive. Buenos Aires, still dressed in black 6 months after her husband's death, Argentine President Cristina Fernández is a heavy burden to bear. Fernández, who succeeded her husband Néstor Kirchner as president 4 years ago, carries the hopes of die-hard supporters who want her to run in October's presidential election and deepen the leftist reforms he began. Occasionally tearful, she refers wistfully to Kirchner as her lifelong companion in near-daily speeches in working-class districts around the capital where the couple's backing is strongest. A dream began 8 years ago. Today it isn't just a dream, it's a reality we need to build on, she said recently. The dream is Kirchnerism, an idiosyncratic blend of interventionist economic policy, the championing of human rights and nostalgia for the heyday of another husband and wife team that dominated Argentine politics, General Juan Perón and Evita. Fernández, 58, has staged a remarkable recovery in the polls, which give her an approval rating of about 50%. Widowhood has endeared her with voters who have seen a softer side to her combative character. At the same time, Wall Street has been disappointed in hopes that the investment climate would improve in Argentina with Kirchner out of the picture. On the contrary, Fernández has imposed price controls, reinforced state influence on private companies, and taken other steps that have unnerved the business community. But Cristina, as she is commonly known, is keeping the nation, and the financial markets, guessing. It may be a ploy to whip up a clamor for her candidacy, although some commentators suggest she may be having doubts due to family pressures or health concerns.
If you're getting tired of watching this video, you can always pause it, grab some glass of water, some popcorn, and support me on Patreon. The link is right down below.
Deeply mistrustful of the media, journalists have not been able to quiz her over her plans, and until she confirms whether she will seek re-election on October 23rd, the will she, won't she speculation will intensify. Everything, however, suggests she will. In the streets of Buenos Aires, Cristina 2011 is daubed across walls and bus shelters. Smiling campaign posters pair her in a myriad of possible alliances with would-be mayors or provincial governors hoping to ride on the coattails of her surge in the polls. Allies vouch for her candidacy and say the splintered opposition is floundering. There's no one who can replace her right now. She's completely aware, and she's used to being in power. She's not some little princess in a tutu. There's no doubt she'll run, said Congressman Jorge Pampa Alvaro, who met Fernández and Kirchner when they were idealistic law students in the 1970s. The odds are stacked in her favor. The opposition is struggling to forge an electoral alliance strong enough to pose a serious threat to her, and Latin America's no.3 economy is growing at one of the world's briskest rates. Unemployment is near a 20-year low, and consumer confidence rose to a record high in March this year, according to a monthly index produced since 2004 by TNS Argentina and the Catholic University in Buenos Aires. Fernandez's supporters say you cannot ignore such numbers, and some polls suggest she would get enough votes to avoid a runoff election. Backers highlight progress on expanding pensions coverage, child welfare benefits and the construction of schools and homes. Some demand deeper reforms, such as a trade union-backed bill that would force companies to share their profits. We're on the way to achieving the 50-50 that Perón and Evita strived for, union boss Hugo Moyano said in a Labor Day speech, urging Fernandez to run so Perón, Evita and Kirchner can rest in peace. But Fernandez's detractors say antagonistic policy making, high inflation and prickly ties with big business will sooner or later stymie the boom and blacklist the country for good among investors. As a result of authoritarian practices, we're living through one of the worst moments in democratic times, said Buenos Aires Mayor Mauricio Macri, leader of a center-right op.
Returned to the fold. When Kirchner died of a heart attack at the couple's Patagonian retreat in October, Wall Street investors celebrated, looking forward to Argentina's prompt return to the fold. It is not the first time they have been wrong on Argentina. This time, investors misjudged Fernandez and the mood in the country, expecting her to moderate her confrontational approach toward business or slide irreversibly in the polls. Kirchner's death led the couple's harshest critics to anticipate the descent of Kirchnerism into political oblivion. Some said his sudden departure left her isolated, both in private and in public. A political widow, the reluctant heir of his murky legacy, with only a tiny circle of trusted aides. The influence of Kirchner on her administration was so strong even allies acknowledged a kind of dual command, and it is unclear who has stepped into his shoes, particularly as her chief power broker and economic advisor. So far, things have not gone as their enemies expected. Nostalgia for the best years of Kirchner's 2003 to 2007 presidency, and an outpouring of sympathy for a woman who suddenly seemed more likable, have helped Fernandez recover. It's as if being widowed has made her more human, even in how she relates to the public, said Olga Warnett, author of a biography about the president, who also knows the Kirchners from their student days. Though her husband's death robbed Fernandez of her closest advisor, who battled behind the scenes to shore up support for his wife from the kingpins of the fractious Peronist party, it gave her an opportunity to step outside of his shadow. The widely held view that he was calling the shots dogged her from the start, especially during an acrimonious dispute with the country's farmers over soy taxes in 2008. At that time, Fernandez's approval rating fell to its lowest point, about 20%, as voters rejected her antagonistic handling of the conflict. But against the odds, she recovered, something few leaders have managed once the electorate has become disenchanted. She's much more her real self now. She's grown into the job, and then with Kirchner's death she had to assume the leadership. Former Economy Minister Martin Lustau, who quit during the farm conflict, said in an interview with a local news website. Fernandez's fiery tone, which critics find haughty and peevish, has softened. In the weeks after Kirchner's death, she showed a few signs of greater pragmatism, even reaching out to Kirchner's arch-foe, the International Monetary Fund, for help to design a new consumer price index. Wall Street's hopes for a change of course were quickly dashed, however. In the past 6 months, she has cranked up pressure on the private sector with fresh price controls to battle double-digit inflation, tighter import curbs and a decree to beef up the state's presence on company boards in which the ANSYS Pensions Agency holds a stake. Fernandez had already stunned the private sector in late 2008 by pushing the nationalization of private pension funds, a step that handed ANSYS stakes in more than 40 Argentine companies. Such measures infuriate hostile business leaders and conservative newspaper columnists, who like to draw parallels with Venezuela's socialist president Hugo Chavez. But they go down well with many voters, who blame the 2001-2 crisis on the free market economic policies embraced in the 1990s. Argentines with memories of the hyperinflation of the late 1980s and the devastating crisis 10 years ago have good reason to think things could be far worse than they are today. The current model works in as much as we don't have scares like we did in the past. There aren't runs on the banks or Corralitos like in 2001, said Carmen Archidiacono, 48, a local government worker out window shopping in downtown Buenos Aires.
Thank you. Financial markets never forgave Kirchner for the tough 2005 restructuring of some $100 billion in defaulted bonds, which saw creditors walk away with hefty losses. But such policies went down well with crisis-weary Argentines, helping Fernandez to an easy election win to succeed her husband in 2007. As thousands queued to catch a glimpse of his coffin last year, many supporters tied notes reading "Thank you" to the railings of the pink presidential palace. Kirchner's death left a huge gap, but it also showed us things we hadn't realized, like that fact that there is a generation of young people who are aware of the changes he put in motion, said Estela Di Carlotto, head of the Grandmothers' Rights Group, a Kirchnerist youth group called La Campera, founded by the couple's son Maximo Kirchner, has risen to prominence in recent months, although the true extent of its influence on policy making is hard to measure because, like most government figures, its members rarely talk to the media. "We're completely banned from speaking to journalists," one group member said when approached to comment. Members of La Campera, whose leaders include the president of the state-run airline, are leading a post-Kirchner propaganda drive reminiscent of Perón and Evita's late 1940s heyday. Stylish stencil designs depicting Fernandez and Kirchner have sprung up across the capital. Kirchner has been given a makeover as the Eternauta, a play on the cult comic book hero El Eternauta who travels eternally through time, and town squares and roads are being hurriedly named in his honor. Her successor, Mauricio Macri, a stage center-right businessman who carefully rations his public appearances, not only presented the personal antithesis to Kirchner, but he also effectively ran on abolishing her governing model, promising to modernize Argentina's creaking economy and public institutions with pro-market policies he said would result in zero poverty. But even as Kirchner faces trial on nearly a dozen charges of bribery, embezzlement and money laundering from her time in office, she might be on the brink of an unlikely comeback. Fernandez and Cristina Kirchner suffered overwhelming defeat in primary elections in Argentina this year. The government's alliance was defeated by the opposition in 18 to 24 electoral districts of the country, including the province of Buenos Aires. The main candidate of the Casa Rosada fails in cover to the face and the president admits that some mistakes were made. "We are the most pessimistic within the government, or the most adverse investigations for Casa Rosada will anticipate an electoral surge that are the government of the Argentine president, Alberto Fernandez, primary levies simultaneous openings in obrigatorias, carried out not last Sunday to elect them candidates who will contest vague in the House and in the Senate during the legislative elections of the next day, November 14. It was the worst election for United Peronism, in many moments. After the country's redemocratization in 1983, the movement fragmented, since the 1997 legislative elections, in the final stretch of Carlos Menem's government. In the words of Ignacio Labaqui, a professor at the Catholic University of Argentina, the country was the scene of a wave of national punishment against the administration of Fernandez and his vice president, Cristina Kirchner. The ruling Frente de Todos alliance ranked first, in terms of voter participation in its primaries, in just 6 of Argentina's 24 electoral districts, being defeated even in the province of Buenos Aires, where a third of the national electorate lives and where Cristina had, until now, her most faithful political fief. Majority in check. On Monday, amidst a flurry of criticism of the government and with markets on the rise for the good result achieved by the opposition alliance Together for Change, the chief of staff, Santiago Cafiero, emphasized that governability is not at stake. "We are committed to listen to the message from the ballot boxes. If the result is confirmed at the polls in November, the ruling Frente de Todos could lose 6 senators, and, with that, control of the House, and 9 deputies. The Frente de Todos has 120 seats in the chamber, out of a total of 257, and its goal in November was to keep 52 and, in the best-case scenario, now totally discarded, to expand its bench to reach a majority.
Obviously, much more robbing of the Argentinian people happened, but I literally can't cover it in just one episode. So for now, thank you very much for watching today's videos. If you have any doubts, you can always send me an email at hugo.loh@gmail.com. Thank you very much for watching today's videos.